Hi everyone, this is Matt and with me is Slavena. We're from the ABBYY team. Today we're digging into the pros and cons of using general purpose LLMs for processing business documents.
Yeah, hi Matt. And believe it or not, we're not here to say don't use them at all because we think that in fact the topic is way more nuanced than that. So, what we want to do today is look at where LLMs shine, where they fall short, and why the enterprises we work with we find end up with using a hybrid strategy actually.
Exactly. And let me start from a developer's perspective. LLMs are quite simply amazing. As you likely know, we can prototype very fast, very quickly, just by writing prompts in plain English. They can handle messy formats like tables and free text, all different types of layouts. They're multimodal and multilingual and can even reason about the meaning behind the text that they're extracting. That's why customers love the idea of prompt-based extraction due to no training required.
And we get it. That's the appeal we hear a lot from customers, and it makes total sense. But we find that when you go beyond that proof of concept stage, the things get a little bit more complicated. So we wanted to dig into that. And maybe the first challenge that comes to mind is probably hallucinations. Everybody has heard about them, right? So models sometimes make things up, and everybody has experienced it. They're never predictable in document processing. Just a single wrong number can cause big problems. Like imagine your invoice total is suddenly 4 figures long, then instead of three, that kind of makes a difference, right? So sometimes even we find that LLMs fabricate descriptions of the document and add it to the apparently extracted text, which starts making validation really tricky in production scenarios.
Exactly, and that's why LLMs are built to generate text, not guarantee accuracy. Developers, we try to control it, the output with prompt engineering, retrieval augmented generation, RAG, or human review, but none of those fully solve the issue, honestly.
Yeah, because the prompts at the end of the day are really fragile. So you fine tune them, you make them work for your use case, you get good results. But then these models change quite quickly. So as soon as an update comes, then the prompt is broken. And there you are, you have to start from the beginning or start fine tuning your prompt. Or a model that you used for your setup gets deprecated. That happens also quite quickly these days. So you have to now start all over again. So that's not kind of sustainable situation for enterprises, and you don't really want to revalidate your prompts every few months. If you're lucky, that it takes a few months until you have to do that.
Right?
So yeah, we mentioned earlier, or Matt mentioned earlier, the human in the loop as one way to control hallucinations. And this is one thing that is actually crucial for document processing because in these business critical processes where you need 100% accuracy, you cannot really go around human in the loop. So it's not a new concept for LLMs and for controlling hallucinations. But if you have LLM as your extraction engine, you have to build that whole review workflow yourself, right? You have to build the flow, the handling of the tasks, the UI, the user experience. So that's one thing that you have to consider. But I find there is a bigger issue around that, around the human in the loop aspect, which is the corrections that humans make in that process kind of are wasted because they apply only that to that document. Because when you make the fixes, they get kind of lost in these billions of training tokens that the general purpose LLM has. And you cannot really uptrain your model to make it better for the future. It kind of is, in that sense, wasted time and resource on the humans.
Exactly, totally agree. And that's why all of us at Abby, we're more so fans of smaller purpose built models because they're simply different in the sense that the human corrections that you can make actually improve the model and get fed back in. And there's validation rules for each document type that guide when humans should step in the human in the loop process. Overall, the effort compounds in value instead of disappearing in other scenarios.
Yeah, that's really the advantage of these smaller models and the purpose-built models. Then we have the problem with explainability. I mean, enterprises need to know why a field was extracted, where exactly it was extracted from. And with the LLM, you just receive an answer. You don't really have this audit trail that you would require to know where the data came from. And in many of the regulated industries, that's a deal breaker.
And of course, you can't forget about security and compliance. Many, if not most, enterprises simply can't send sensitive documents up and load them up into a public cloud LLM for obvious reasons of that. You'd have to build the entire compliance label layer yourself, which can be a non-starter even for a large enterprise.
Yeah, and all of that together adds to the overall cost because the DLMs, as everybody knows, are price per token. So if you send long documents and the entire document, that kind of adds up quite quickly and gets quite expensive. You cannot predict it upfront very well. And when you add the effort of building the validation, the exception handling that we spoke about, the governance that Matt just mentioned, and all that is from scratch, then it ends up very quickly in that kind of build versus buy decision where you're basically building the entire IDP pipeline yourself and tweaking it and maintaining it as you go.
Right. And ultimately, where does that leave us? Because as we mentioned, LLMs do have their benefits. They're great for rapid prototyping, they're extremely flexible in their capabilities, and the addition of semantic reasoning is a huge plus, but they're also incredibly fragile and incomplete as a standalone solution.
Yeah, so that's why we come back to this hybrid approach that we mentioned in the beginning. We're kind of big fans of the hybrid approach because we see the advantages of both technologies and where but they both shine. So that hybrid approach stands for the using the purpose-built IDP platform, which handles classification, validation, explainability, all the compliance, the human in the loop UI, and then you plug in the LLM exactly where it adds the real value when you can where you can benefit and extend that automation and eliminate more of the aspects that were until now handled by the humans instead of just replacing what an established IDP platform can already do.
Yes, and one of the aspects that I really appreciate is that LLMs are especially strong with highly unstructured content, which across all different types of documents and industry types are highly prevalent. So that's where an area where deterministic rules and traditional software struggle. One of our customers, for example, uses IDP for document segmentation, and then after that uses an LLM for extraction. The net result there is a lowering of cost and an improvement of privacy because their entire document doesn't need to leave their own systems, which is a big privacy win.
Yeah, that's really a big advantage of that approach. And another use case that you can think of is, for example, augmenting the data that you have already extracted. Like, for example, you compare it against some sort of regulations, or you add the classification according to a standard typical for your industry. And that's something that's very common in transportation. So you can do a lot of this data augmentation with the LLM.
And additionally, adding assessments on top of structured data. In talent acquisition, for example, an LLM can evaluate candidate profiles once IDP has completed the heavy lifting of extracting the data and the text.
Yeah, and one more maybe example that ultimately is the perfect fit for an LLM that is created to generate text is, for example, drafting responses. So you identified based on the data that you extracted that something is wrong. So until now, you would have to have a human to go in and figure it out and communicate with another human what happened. In that case, you can use the LLM to identify that something went wrong and draft that communication and send it out to the other human. So here you saved some more time.
Exactly. So overall, as we've seen, the creative possibilities are huge for this space and combining IDP and LLMs. But of course, Savannah, there's more.
Yeah, the to really hammer that home. the foundation of that, of the data that's underneath all these use cases, has to be trustworthy and well structured. It has to be AI ready. I think everybody has understood that by now, that if your data is not prepared for AI, then your AI initiatives are not going to land well. So that's where exactly we see the advantage of IDP in that whole process.
Exactly, and this hybrid approach really seems to be the best of both worlds, where you can have the speed and flexibility without losing trust, governance, or control over your documents and processes.
Yeah, and then you avoid this reinventing the decades of hard-won infrastructure for document automation that we've invested over 35 years in building for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you're experimenting with LLMs and document processing, we'd love to hear what's working and what's not in your projects. So definitely leave us a comment below or reach out to us. Cheers.
Thanks.